Why does my loved one keep falling? What do I do about my loved one that they are home, but they constantly want to go home? These are things that frustrate caregivers on a daily basis. Hi, I'm Julie Roca, and you have found the podcast Aging Gracefully with Julie Roca. And today I have a dear friend on that I've had on in another podcast life before, Sira Boats. Sira is a dementia specialist. Sira, tell me what your credentials look like and what brought you to being the dementia specialist that you are.
Julie, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be
Thank you.
back. Deja
Yes.
vu.
Yes.
So I'm an occupational therapist of trade. Over 30 years, my grandfather lived with dementia and eventually passed away under the care of my grandmother. And my mom right now is on the dementia journey. And as an occupational therapist in a home care setting mostly, I just realized we have to do better.
Yeah.
We have to be able to just meet our person where they're at, come up with better solutions, practical solutions, and lock arms with our loved ones, our persons living with dementia, so they have hope and they don't feel so alone.
Yes. Yes. And right now, you've got something very exciting coming up with the Boats Memory Method. Can you just share a little bit about what that is?
Yes. So, we've been so fortunate to partner with Concierge Home Care for the longest time.
Yeah.
And they have just helped to really give Boats Memory Method wings and for us to fly as an independent dementia consulting company. And as of June 1st of this year, 2024, we are just that, an independent dementia consultant firm. And so I'm so very, very grateful to all the opportunities of everyone like you and our partners in the community and Concierge Home Care who has invested so much and believed in this platform and allow us to now serve everyone and their caregivers out there and healthcare workers with this platform. So very exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first time that I met you and we sat down together and you told me what the Boats Memory Method was. And I was so excited. And I said, how long until you can bring this to the world? And
Yes.
for you to be able to do that now under just an independent company with the Boats Memory Method is so exciting to me too. So
It's a
truly
new
excited.
adventure, a new chapter with lots of exciting things.
Yes, yes. And one of the things that I love about the Boats Memory Method is that rather than saying we're at stage 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 in dementia, you break it down in a different way. So tell me a little bit about your flowers.
Yes. So as an occupational therapist, for me, the importance of understanding where someone is at is an evidence-based assessment. And I just felt as if our occupational therapy environment was lacking a tool that can help us connect our person living with dementia with other people, with their environment, with meaningful activities. So for me, if you have a meaningful connection, then you can have meaningful engagement and you can have a meaningful day. And so often with our persons living with dementia, in the dementia journey, they're losing executive function, losing the ability to manipulate and connect with others and with the environment. So with Boat's memory method, I created an analysis that's evidence-based, that's executed through an occupational therapist or assistant that allows us to understand and score a person's executive function. But instead of just giving a raw score to say this person scores this and therefore they stage 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, we are translating that into the memory bouquet, which is a lily beginning cognitive decline, a daisy, mild cognitive decline, a violet, moderate cognitive decline, a rose, a severe cognitive decline, and then our bouquet level is advanced neurocognitive decline.
Yes. And what I love about that is that when you broke it down, you could say, okay, here are the kinds of things that you can anticipate when your loved one is at a lily level. And here are some of the ways that you can interact with them at this level. And even at the bouquet level, there are still ways that you can interact. There's this beautiful lady on, I don't know if she's on TikTok or somewhere. I watch her, and her mother has been living with dementia for 10 years. And so she's been kind of recording this journey. And even though her mother is in that bouquet level, she's still able to interact and enjoy her mother. And her mother is clearly getting some enjoyment from her. And so if we can figure out how to have those engagements and make them meaningful at every single level, how much better will it be for our person living with dementia, and how much better it is for us?
Exactly. It's calling
We don't want to live in
it's a
frustration.
joyful connection for both parties. It's a
is.
meaningful connection, creating joy. And I always say, even if it's just 5 minutes at a time, it still counts.
Yeah.
Every time we're successful, every time we create connection and joy, it counts. At the brain level, at an emotional level, it has that ripple effect through the whole day.
Yes.
And sets the stage for the next interaction. And so how beautiful could it be if we have a language that creates a roadmap for me, for you, for the caregiver, for the healthcare provider, for a trained caregiver to be in that person's their bubble of life.
Yes.
And
It's a good word for it.
and help them be able to be successfully connected, meaningfully connected with objects, with people, with situations, with the environment. So that is my passion, and that's what Boat's Memory Method is trying to do, changing the world one person at a time.
Yes, and normally I wait until the end to kind of give a pitch for you a little bit, but I'm going to just say if anybody needs one-on-one consultation right now, they can get that with, I believe it's you for at least a little while until you're so overwhelmed and so busy you can't.
Yes.
And so what a great gift for some people that really need help in figuring out how to engage. So I'm going to leave information for that at the bottom so that you'll know how to find Sira and the Boat's Memory Method and how you might be able to connect to get that one-on-one if you would like it too. But I did want to have you on to ask about some very specific things that you and I get asked all the time, that people call and say, oh my goodness, if my loved one falls and goes to the hospital one more time, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yes.
So let's start with some of those questions. You know, can you answer why might my person be falling?
Yes. So this is where there is not a simple answer. And it's very important for us to understand a couple of things. We want to understand the type of dementia our person is living with. For example, if your person has Lewy bodies dementia or Parkinsonisms, there is a balance and a movement disorder component that is going to over time maybe get worse, and your person will be more likely to fall. So what can we do to come alongside you and structure an environment, anticipate challenges in the environment based on your person's diagnosis to avoid the falls in the environment, and also educate our person, the caregiver, on what to look for. So there is the big umbrella is the diagnosis, and starting with the diagnosis, the dementia diagnosis. So that's very important. And then, of course, underlying pathologies, understanding if your person has high blood pressure, blood pressure fluctuations, was there change of medication, do they need to look at medication, or maybe your person has not been taking their medication the way they should. So there is another layer. So looking at the pathologies and then looking at medications. And not only at medications for a specific pathology, such as maybe blood pressure, but maybe looking at other medications that may be prescribed by a different physician that may be interacting
Right.
with other medications, or what we see is that there are lists of medications that we should avoid for a person living with dementias.
Is that something that your team does? Do you look at the list of medications?
Yes, and if we do
Wonderful.
not know, we will find out for you. So we have
Okay.
wonderful pharmacy advocates that we work with, nurse practitioners that we work with. So if we don't know the answer, we will find the answer for you.
Okay, that's wonderful.
But we do know enough about, the standard medications that people are on and what could interact, as well as the type of medication someone should not be on.
Right.
The other part of that is once we look beyond the diagnoses, pathologies, the possible medications and medication interactions, is we can then just start looking at our immediate environment,
Okay.
look at our schedule, look at hydration. Sometimes it's as basic as just hydration.
And sometimes I have discovered it's the toenails in the shoes
Yes.
that can cause people to fall. So, even paying attention to little things like,
Details.
has your loved one seen a podiatrist
Yes.
in 6 months?
Yes.
Are their shoes fitting properly anymore? So there's so
It's
much
funny you say
to
that
it.
because I went to evaluate someone in a assisted living. She was in memory care, and in her room, the lights were very low. The bathroom, the lights were off. And when I was doing my assessment, I wanted to take her into the bathroom. And that's part of occupational therapy, is kind of have someone show you how they go about their personal hygiene. And she was a little unstable on her feet. And I was kind of, holding onto her gait belt, guiding her. And then finally, when we put the light onto her a real room, because I was so focused on her personal hygiene, brushing her teeth, washing her hands, I never looked down to her feet. And so when we looked down to her feet, I realized that she had dress shoes on over socks. So she had this beautiful little ballerina shoes that she was trying to put on over socks. So obviously these shoes were not fitting well. They were pinching. The socks were all rolled up inside, and she was not happy. But she did not have the verbal ability to articulate to me her discomfort, what was bothering her, and why she wasn't steady on her feet. So once I had literally had the light on in the room, I could see what's going on. And so that is, sometimes it is a very simple thing. Like you said, it could be a painful toe. It could be that feet are swollen. They're not fitting the shoes that may have fit before. It may be that their socks are not quite the right size, and they're being crumpled up in the shoes and causing discomfort. So that is, some other things are also in the environment, just the uneven textures on the floor. So going from a carpet to tile or to wood. And when someone, their perception on their feet, their proprioceptive feedback is impaired from dementia, they're unable to perceive the subtle changes in flooring, which may catch them off guard, literally, and have them stumble and fall.
Yep, I've seen them literally stop at a threshold and not know what to do with it, going from a difference between carpet and tile.
Right.
And feeling like, their depth perception is so off, and they can't really identify the surfaces, and so they don't know what they're stepping into. They don't know if they're stepping into a body of water or a sea of grass or a carpet. So they'll stop.
Yes, so the combination between not feeling where your feet are at and not being able to correctly perceive the density of what you're standing on, combined with not able to visually perceive if this surface is a fluid surface or because we don't realize when we're moving in space that our ability to perceive and plan for how we're moving influences our balance.
So much.
And so the visual perception, the difference in colors, the difference in what I'm feeling under my feet, so the difference between what I'm seeing and perceiving and not being able to integrate that information correctly.
Is a lot.
A lot of that will also. And then the little bit I wanted to say about dehydration and fluids is when I'm dehydrated, I become dizzy.
Yeah.
When I'm dehydrated, my blood pressure drops and my dizziness
Yes.
increases. And many of us stay dehydrated, especially in Florida and especially in the summer. So that's like the number one thing on your radar, the top check mark that you can eliminate and say, okay, let's start with hydration. Is my loved one hydrated? Let's start with that.
And what is the guideline for hydration for someone living with dementia? Because at that point, they're not super active. They're not probably out gardening. They're definitely not getting in and out of the car all day and working. So do they need, I need half my body's weight, probably plus a little bit more in our Florida
When you're
summers.
active, yeah.
But maybe my loved one with dementia doesn't.
I would still say that half the body weight in water, because that's the scientific guideline
Okay.
for what our organs need
Okay.
to just function.
So that leads us to another issue that you and I talk about a lot. If we can't get our persons to drink, I mean, most of us are wandering around with like a Stanley cup, 40-ounce cup, and we know what that is, and it's supposed to be our reminder to hydrate.
Yes.
But our persons with our loved ones living with dementia, you can set a cup down.
And that doesn't mean anything.
No, they don't know that it's for them, or
Yes.
they don't know what's
Yes.
in there and that they need it. And so tell me how you address that.
That's a very good question. So in the different phases of our flower levels, that's going to look different. So if you have a lily or a daisy at a higher level, you can still educate your person. You can have alarms set up. You can have visual cues in the bathroom. Every time I use the toilet, every time I wash my hands, I have a red cup right there, and I'm going to have a full cup of water every time I wash my hands.
Yeah.
Or I can have a visual cue on my refrigerator, and as a caregiver, I can set up maybe I have a 16 ounces bottles of water, and my person need 4 of those a day. I can set them up with the date and times.
Great idea.
And so put
Yes.
it in the refrigerator, and I have a little sign on my refrigerator to remind my person, and I can set the alarm. At that time, you're going to go to the refrigerator, drink your water.
And what I love these days, we have Alexis, and
Yes.
you can definitely tell your Alexis to set a reminder to go
Every
drink
2
your
hours.
water.
Yes.
Every 2 hours. I
Yes.
love me some Alexis for people
Yes.
in those early stages of dementia.
Especially when they still can comprehend who is Alexis, and it's Alexis talking to me. We have to be careful once we start to have delusions and paranoias. That's in there.
Okay.
And we have to be careful if we have someone that doesn't understand digital instructions. But if it's someone that's used to the digital age and a digital voice, they may be able to follow that even into the journey as they journey into the different memory stages.
So I only thought that's good for like the lily, and then what's the next one? The daisy is
Daisy is my next stage, mild, but violet. If I had a lily that gets used to using Alexa consistently and the voice of Alexa and the type of instructions, then by the time our lily journeys to be a violet, they will still remember that because that's a long-term memory. So the beauty of inserting solutions earlier rather than later means that we will have better carryover of the same solutions even when somebody becomes a violet. Versus trying to insert new solutions for a violet, their learning ability is less. So now I have to rely on my care partner to
be telling me
and to set it up for me. And then there are things that we can start to insert as our brain declines, as our tastes changes, because a lot of people do not want to drink water. It tastes like nothing. It looks like nothing. So now we can start to use colors. We can use flavors.
Okay.
We can, especially if we're not really focused on somebody's weight, because a lot of time nutrition is a challenge, and we really want somebody to get a boost in their nutrition. Now we can use, fruity protein shakes with a color that goes into the water, and I use a clear cup where somebody
they
can
can
see
see it.
it, and they can track how much they've had, and with verbal cueing and through a social activity, me having a cup and you having a cup, and we're drinking together. Somebody's
Yes,
more
yeah.
likely. Or put it in a container that person may relate to. Maybe it is an empty beer can and they always had a beer, this time of day, but we just changing that
Now we're
fluid with
having
something else.
white grape juice.
Yes,
Or
yes. Or maybe
ginger
it's
ale.
maybe it's a wine glass, and instead of having 3 glasses of wine in the evening, I'm having 3 glasses of diluted grape juice. So there are strategies to engage our person to make it fun in a social setting. Fruit is great. Watermelon is great.
Yes, because those are very hydrating.
Yes, jellies. If we have a jelly, a cup of jelly is equal to a cup of liquid.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Jello,
Jello.
yeah.
I just had Devin here, and he's a nutritionist, and he was talking about just taking some milk and putting protein powder and putting xanthan gum into it and making it kind of like an ice cream and putting it in the freezer.
Yeah.
It's got nutrition, it's got your liquids in it, and I mean, that would be a fun treat
Yeah,
as well.
fun treat, or anything that's, you can get 100% fruit popsicles these days. So now you're getting nutrition, you're getting the hydration. So there's so many fun ways that we can build hydration into our person's day. But as we progress in our journey, it goes from a lily and a daisy, setting them up, empowering them to be independent,
Yes, yeah.
to a violet and a rose, where our care partner, our caregiver, needs to take on the task of setting a routine for hydration and implementing solutions, fun solutions for their person to keep them hydrated throughout the day.
Yes,
Yes.
And then at end of life, you're still probably going to have to do that as a care partner, and you're going to be lifting the cup and putting the straw in their mouth.
Correctly.
You're
Correct.
going to be doing pretty much everything
Yes.
for them.
For them, that's correct.
That last
Correct.
stage. So, even at the very end of life, I'm in hospice, and that is kind of my passion and where I'm at right
Yes.
now. And at the very end of life, you'll want to talk to a hospice expert, have a hospice consult, and say, hey, my loved one just they don't seem to want to eat anymore. They don't want to drink anymore. That's where you pull in hospice and have a
Absolutely.
goals of care conversation, because the body does begin to shut down.
Yes.
But until we get to that point, it's very important to keep them hydrated.
Oh, absolutely. And to that effect, I think it's so important when you, as a person, might be having a diagnosis with dementia. It doesn't mean that you're going to go the full journey and the full decline. That's the
Exactly.
hope.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the hope. That if we insert nutrition and hydration and exercise and look at your sleep schedule and your brain stimulation, and there's so many things. I think 40% of factors that impacts dementia can be prevented.
Yeah.
However, I think it is of the utmost importance that we lock arms with a person who has a dementia diagnosis, and that person map out their plan for themselves, even though there is a nice chance that you may not experience further decline from your dementia. You should have a conversation with your family members, with your healthcare surrogate, with your power of attorney. Get that in place. And one of the conversations you need to have is towards end of life. What comfort levels would I like?
Oh, yeah.
What type of support? And I think it's so important, have that conversations with somebody in hospice. Watch Julie's podcasts, because she has so many experts that comes on here and give you those tips. But I think that is a phenomenal idea, is to be prepared for my own body. I always tease and say, I would always want Bluebell vanilla ice cream till the end of life. I don't care what you do, scoop it and put it in my mouth, it will just melt away. But
Yes.
there are things that we can integrate into that care plan to support our loved one.
Absolutely.
And have quality of life.
Yes,
even
that's
through hospice.
so important to sit down and have that conversation for every single one of us that's over 18
Every
years
one of
old.
us.
We should already have
Yes.
that in place for sure. So another one that happens all the time is you'll be at home. And maybe it's the home that you've been in for 30 years or 40 years, and your loved one starts saying, I want to go home. I need to go home. And they get agitated and antsy, and they're trying to get out, and they need to go home. Talk to me about that.
Someone told me recently, the best advice that you, meaning me, has given was meet the person where they at. That advice goes for any situation that you may find yourself in. And I think the big factor behind wanting to be home is that urge to belong, to feel safe, and also being in a familiar surroundings. Now, someone would tell me, oh, but this is familiar. They've lived here for 30 years. And then my challenge would be, depending on where that person is at in this moment, in their memories and in their journey, they may be a young married wife in her first apartment. And maybe there was a very special, emotional connection to a very first home of their own. Maybe it's a childhood home.
Yes.
Where there's a very a deep emotional connection. So if we can try to figure out what that place is that that person have that deep emotional connection with, then maybe through reminiscence therapy, talking to that person and say, tell me about home. What is so special about home? I can really tell that you love your home. Tell me about it. And so through those questions, you may be able to, well, first of all, anchor that person in the here and now.
Yes.
Connect with them on an emotional level because their feelings are being validated and valued. And then you may have opportunity to discover what home is. Was it a farm? Was it a big old house? Was there a swing in the backyard? Was there a dog? Was mom or dad there? What does home look like? You will not be able to shut this question off.
You cannot.
But what you can do is meet the person where they're at and create a safe space for them to express their feelings about home. I have a beautiful little story about a gentleman who really struggled, and we've been working, and my assistant Janie has been working with him for a while in assisting his wife through this journey. And she really struggled with, is this home? And where is home? And I don't feel home. And Janie has been guiding him on having conversations with her. And what worked for her one night was a breakthrough for him. Janie was there, and he had bought dinner, a meal for their dinner. And he brought it out and said, I got you your favorite meal for dinner. And she said, oh, this is great. Can we go home now and eat? And he said to her, well, we have a table right here. We have some chairs. We have plates. Why don't we just have dinner here right now? And she said, oh, you know what? You're right. Let's go ahead and have dinner right now. And so although he didn't explore that idea further.
But he didn't say, you're home. You're home.
Exactly.
What are you talking
He
about?
did not get into an argument. He did not deny her reality. He met her where she was at, but he gave her a different way of thinking about the situation at hand.
Yes. And sometimes you can't always do that investigation, but you can also use tactics of like trying to divert their attention and saying, hey,
Yes.
maybe we can go home in a little bit, but I have dinner coming, or I have
Yes.
so-and-so is coming home from
Yes.
school. So if you don't mind, let's have a cookie first.
Absolutely.
And then we can talk about this later.
Absolutely. And I like to frame that in where we're offering a different sensory opportunity, a different sensory experience. So for me, the way when I train caregivers is, for our person living with dementia, when they have a very strong emotional fixation, maybe they have hallucination, maybe they have it may be an auditory hallucination, a visual hallucination, it may be a tactile hallucination. It may be a paranoia or a delusion. And this wanting to be home when I'm already home kind of fall under the delusion component but with that little caveat that they truly believe that they still live in a different home because that's what they remember. So with that being said, what we're trying to do is the brain is almost living in a short circuit of emotion that is so strong right now that emotional urge is all that I can think about. My memory is already challenged. I'm unable to process what's really happening right here, right now. And what I anchor myself on is that one memory of safety and belonging. And so what can we do to give that person an alternate sensory experience for the brain to focus on? Is that an animal? Is that walking outside the garden and literally smelling the roses? Is that going to pick a popsicle out of the refrigerator before we go home? Let's pick a popsicle and let's just sit down and enjoy it. Is it music? So, but that doesn't mean that deep-seated emotion and longing is going to go away.
And it's not.
It's not.
It's going to be there, and you are going to have to deal with the repetition over and over. So as a caregiver, the best thing that you can do for yourself is arm yourself with some of these tactile things that you can redirect. Arm yourself with some questions that you can ask that take them back to that moment.
See if you can find photos, maybe old photographs of different homes, and to talk about maybe childhood photographs, young adult photographs, different areas. You may even find a book on home decoration and architecture, and look at homes together and see, let's look at these homes. Tell me about your home. And let's pick colors for our home. And it can become an activity together where we're talking about what does our perfect home look like.
Yes, how will I redecorate? That's what I hope my children are watching and they can get some tips, because I'm gonna be good with that. So another one that I have questions for all the time is my loved one is not safe to drive.
Yes.
And yet we still have a struggle. And I have people that have taken keys away, and they go nuts looking for the keys, or try to find other keys and scratch the vehicle all up trying to get in. I've had people get in and find the keys, start the car, sit in the garage with the garage door closed.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been some very dangerous situations, and there's so many questions about how to maneuver through this very difficult stage.
Yes, and that is a very sensitive topic. It's a very emotional laden topic. Our sense of self, our sense of independence is so wrapped into us being able to make a decision right here, right now, to move from point A to B, or to quickly meet our needs in some way through our car.
And think about it. How many years are you anticipating before you're able to go get that driver's license?
Yes.
And then you've got this freedom for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden somebody's saying,
you cannot drive.
Give me those keys, you can't drive.
Yes. And I think also, I wonder, if there's a difference in the identity. There's some people that have more identity in driving than other people.
Yeah.
So therefore, you're going to find the people who have a stronger identity in driving and independence to be more fixated on that and the
Right.
loss of that than other people.
I mean, you think about a truck driver.
Yes.
What are they going to do when they have to give up their keys?
And so there are some solutions, a couple different things. First of all, there are programs where your loved one can be tested, and we can have scientific evidence that even though they may have early onset of dementia, they may be perfectly fine for driving. And so at the Lily stage, I would say definitely, if you're concerned, go have a driving test done. You can get it done through UF, through the Occupational Therapy School. They actually have a driving test set up at Oak Hammock, and anybody can go make an appointment, pay privately, and get your loved one tested, and then get a report on what they can or cannot do.
And
so
that's a Gainesville resource, and I will make sure to include that.
Yes,
in the notes.
and there are other resources throughout the state. So Orlando, Jacksonville. So in your major hubs, you will find those adult driving tests. So now you are not the culprit. It is somebody else saying that for this and this reason, your permit cannot be retained any longer.
Yes.
So that is one avenue.
And that helps in some situations.
In some situations, that helps. And that just helps you as a child, especially when it's a little bit gray and your mom and dad's still doing okay, but you have some reservations of how safe they are. This is a great avenue to really understand if they can drive or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, when you go down to a Daisy or a Violet, on my spectrum, from my perspective as a person that gets to Daisy level, I would not recommend that they drive anymore because there's so many variables that can impact them while they're driving.
Yes.
And that will make them unsafe, or could potentially make them unsafe in situations that we cannot predict.
Exactly. I mean, even if you take away the cognition issue, the depth perception changes.
Yes.
The eyesight changes.
Anxiety change,
yes.
the level of anxiety and judgment. And
judgment is a big one that
Yes.
changes. And at that level, I agree. It's really frightening to think that there could be people
yes,
out there driving.
and another piece of that is if they're driving on their own, you don't know where they're going. They can get lost. They can have a lapse of memory. They cannot be able to return, even if they don't get into the accident, which is the number one thing we worry about.
Right.
There's other things that can happen.
I actually had a client probably a year ago, and she called and she said, "You are not going to believe this, but my parents live in an area around here, and we could not find them for days, put out a silver alert. They turned up in Maine in a hospital, badly dehydrated, hadn't eaten, hadn't had anything to drink, didn't know where they were, what they were doing."
That's a very real risk,
is.
And that starts at Daisy level because they can still navigate roads, they can read road signs, they know where they want to go. But when there is a change, maybe they get waylaid because of roadworks.
Yes.
Maybe they are looking, like you were saying, looking for a store to buy water and they don't get to that store. And so they're going to the next place and the next place and the next place and make another turn. That unfortunately, and even in Florida, when people go walking in the evening with their dogs, we're finding these reports of elderly who got lost and dehydrated and passed away. So that's a very real problem, is at the Daisy level, is navigating your environment safely. So it's not just the act of driving, it's the navigation and the memory to be able to know what needs to happen next at a timely manner.
Yes.
But that could be a whole discussion on its own.
Yeah,
but what do we do about that? So the doctor, if you have a physician that's very invested, they can write a note to the DMV and say, please revoke this person's license. And there is a certain portion of our population that will respond to a physician, will respect the physician, and will be okay with that.
Yes, to the point of sometimes I've thought that the physician is almost godlike in their mind.
Yes.
As long as the doctor says do it,
they're going to do it.
they'll do it.
But then there is a large portion, another portion of our population who doesn't care what
A
the doctors
growing
say
portion.
or what the family says. They're still going to do what they want to do.
Yes.
So in that case, we have to get creative. I would not leave the car on the property. I would recommend that somehow you get the mechanic to tow the car and just say that there is been a little noise with the car. Maybe you can take the car for a test drive yourself when you're visiting and say that you're really concerned this car is making a noise, there's some problem, and you're going to have it taken in to look at. And then after that, for some violets, out of sight, out of mind. If the car is not there, even though they have the keys, they may take the keys, walk to the garage, don't see the car, and then start wondering, where's the car? But by the time they've walked back, they've forgotten that they wanted to drive.
But then you have the others that see the car is gone and call the police department.
Right. So I would leave a visual cue on the refrigerator or just above the keys, a note that says, your car is in the shop indefinitely, or just your car is in the shop.
And could you say, call the mechanic and leave a number, and maybe you have a trusted friend that says, hey, still working on it, still waiting on a part.
We can't get the part, it's post-COVID. And post-COVID, the car, or we can just say, this car, the engine needs an overhaul. And I know that some people respond just to cost. And it's if we know what's the limit of that person's ability to pay, that car's cost is going to be double that.
That car is going to cost $20,000.
It's going to cost $20,000 to get fixed. And for that type of problem, what the engine is going through, at this point, it's not worth it. And so, and I agree, this is kind of putting off the problem. Because now this person, I know that we've had some persons that want to go buy a new car.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Well.
And so, but if they don't have transport, they cannot get there. But when somebody's not driving and unsafe to drive, I would say two things. This person most likely should not be taking care of their own medications and set up of their own medications. And this person should not be managing their finances on their own anymore.
Yes.
So those are the three red flags for me when we get to the DAISY level, and then obviously as our journey continues. So when you're thinking about driving and not driving, then you have to be very alert about medication management and about finances.
Great.
So those three go together. So at that point, then you really already have to start talking about the POA, somebody that's supervising on the back end with credit cards and bank accounts, and making sure that there are no unnecessary expenditures. There need to be some safeguard in place so that person cannot spend money, because again, the judgment, the memory, the ability to discern that this is a right decision or not is no longer accurate. Yes.
The dementia journey is long. It's different for everyone. But I love that you have kind of mapped it out a little bit. And I feel like you've made it more clear for those that are going through the journey and for the caregivers. And I am so grateful, and I'm so excited to see how Boat's Memory Method is going to change the world.
So Julie, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing that. And if you have not already liked this podcast and you have not already subscribed to our channel, I ask you to do that, and definitely look around at the people in your life that may be in this dementia journey, and please share it with them and make sure that they can connect also with the Boat's Memory Method group and get so many more answers. Thanks so much, Sira.
Oh, thank you, Julie, and thank you for all you do.
Oh, you're welcome.